Alright guys, well I have a pretty interesting discussion video for you all today. Hopefully it'll be pretty entertaining for you guys as well. So we're going to start off with a couple very surprising things that I am shocked that Clash Royale put in the game, especially considering that it is a kids game, technically speaking, and then later on I'll show you some other posts on Reddit that are just beneficial, I think, for you guys to see. I know these are cheesy, but I'll admit I got a good laugh out of these. So this was a very highly upvoted post. It almost has 5,000 upvotes, and if you guys remember the perfect match, on a lot of them they added cheesy descriptions, but there's one that sticks out in particular. So the Firecracker one, I will light up your world and your towers. That one is not super, crazy. This recruit one is a little weird, I'm not gonna lie. If you don't want me, I have 5 brothers who are just as desperate. That's a little weird, but it's not as crazy as the one we're gonna get to. Skeleton, do you need a date? I don't have anybody. That one's a little, a little corny, kind of funny. You got the Barbarian, my heart rages for you. That one's kind of boring. Mortar, express delivery right to your heart. That's a pretty good one, to be fair. Knight, I can give a good night kiss. That's funny. But then we have this. The Royal Giant. I cannot believe they said this. They knew exactly what they were doing. I think, honestly, this is a marketing technique because they know it's going to get people talking about it because it's so shocking. And quite frankly, it works. Royal Giant. Yes, that's a cannon in my pocket. But I'm also pleased to see you. And guys, I kid you not, the community exploded. There were tons of posts on Twitter about it, Reddit. Everyone was talking about this. And I think we know exactly what they're referring to or what the joke is. If you think about it for a second, I think we all know what it means. I'm not going to say it, but we all know they knew exactly what they were doing. That's for sure. We had tons of people making tweets about it, like Ken, which horn dog at Supercell is behind this, getting tons of likes on Twitter. And overall, everyone just got a good laugh about it. But there's another thing that's in the game. This one is just as shocking, I would say, in my opinion, which I'm going to show you in a second. But lastly, we get to the bats. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I suppose that makes sense because they can't talk, technically. Now, the second thing that I was surprised to see in the game, and a whole lot of other people too, is this. So this one flew under the radar a bit. Obviously, it didn't get as much attention as the Royal Giant, but a lot of people noticed that there was actually a very interesting banner in the banner box shop called Sassy Selfie. Now, upon looking at this, you already are probably going to notice this looks pretty weird because it's the Golden Knight that has a lot of girl features on him. But where it gets more interesting is when you look at the description where they is circled. Now, I don't want to talk about this a ton because it's obviously maybe a controversial subject, and my job is just to inform you guys, not give a ton of opinions on something. But the bottom line is, it was something that people found very interesting that they decided to put it in the game, especially considering it is a kids game, likewise to the Royal Giant thing. It is just something in the game that you typically wouldn't expect. Alright guys, now with those two things out of the way, let's get into some more interesting Reddit posts. So this first one I want to show you guys is some guy put together a simple tier list here showing you what the best evolutions to take are, because obviously you get to pick a free one. So tier list for this February 14th in case it's your first evolution. So strong and flexible, he has the Firecracker, Evolved Knight, and Evolved Skeletons. I 100% agree with that. Those are also evolutions that pair very well with other evolutions, and now that there's 2 evolutions, if you're level 15, that's something you're going to want to keep in mind. Good but restrictive, the Evolved Barbs, Evo Recruits, Evo Royal Giant, and Evo Mortar. There's one thing I would change. Personally, I would put the Evolved Mortar in the Strong and Flexible. I think that's a very good one to pick because it pairs very well with the Firecracker, Knight, and Skeletons. Especially if you have access to 2 evolutions, I think the Evo Mortar is a very good one. Don't pick this, the Bats. In a way, I kind of disagree with it a tiny bit. I feel like it could go into the good but restrictive just because it's cheap, so it's going to pair well with another evolution if you want to use it with the Recruits, for example, or the Knight. So at the end of the day, I think pretty much every evolution is going to be an okay pick. I now want to go over this really well put together Reddit post from a couple days ago. It has quite a lot of upvotes where basically he's giving his overall thoughts on evolution. So he's saying it's a good feature that was unfortunately plagued by a few issues. There's probably some server side kinks that would need to be worked out, but it was literally evolved or something like that. Anyways, he says evolutions are an extremely iffy spot. I would agree with that. Admittedly, they make the game more fun, but there's a few glaring issues that need to be addressed. They're killing expensive decks. They're way too difficult to obtain without spending money and balancing. So, why are evolutions killing expensive decks? Simple. It's because they're based on cycles. The cheaper your deck, the faster you cycle, the more evolutions you get per game. That is completely true. This also indirectly encourages the use of champions as they introduce the 3-card cycle. So how do we combat this? Here's my suggestion. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert. Instead of cycles, change it to a queue time. It can be as simple as the barbarians, 1 cycle is 30 seconds, whereas the knight, 2 cycles is a minute, and that I assume is because the knight is cheaper. The queue would start as soon as the match begins and would reset as soon as the evolution is played. This also allows for much more flexibility when it comes to balancing. The queue would be displayed on the evolution icon, so as you can see where the bomber is, the new Evo, you see a 30-second timer on top of it. That's a pretty cool feature. How do we make evolutions more available without discouraging players from buying them? Allowing the evolution shard from the season shop to be a repeatable purchase sounds like a good idea to me. And then he has some suggestions for balancing them as well. Balance changes. I apologize if any of them are unwarranted. Count 5 to 6. So he's thinking for the evolved bats, they should add an extra bat. Would help make the evolution more viable outside of its gimmick. I kind of disagree with this one. I think it's more so the other evolutions are too strong and not that the evolved bats are too weak. But I guess that is a little debatable at the end of the day. Now, this one I agree with, on the other hand. The Ice Spirit, the cycles go from 2 to 1. That should definitely be done. And then he's saying slow down removed. If it's too underwhelming for 2 cycles, but it would be too overwhelming for 1. We have some more here. For the Evolved Knight, he thinks the damage reduction should be 60% going to 50%. My brother in Christ, he was already good stats for the cost. Very true. Evolved Valkyrie, 10% hit points. I agree with that. She literally pulls potential damage towards her. I think it's warranted. Yeah, that's fair enough. And then the Evolved Skeletons, total duplication count 25. An infinite value for just 1 elixir. I think there needs to be a cap. Yeah, that's a very good one. There's a cap, so only 25 can be spawned. That's a really good idea, actually. And then dies to arrows, and then he said it 3 times just to emphasize how much he believes that. Dies to arrows, dies to arrows, dies to arrows, cycles 2 to 1. Oh, but making it 2 to 1, I don't know about that. I feel like it'll potentially be better, actually, even if it died to arrows, if it had only a 1 cycle. Those are just my thoughts, though. Be sure to let me know what you think. You know, I have to say, man, whoever made this post, pretty good. GD Voices. I approve of most of the things you said. I agree with probably about 80% of it. Do you guys agree with most of the things he said? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.